This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Grief Belief, the journey that we take through life. Not always the happiest journey, but it's real, and we all are going to experience grief in our life, and I'm sure we already have. Our panelist, Alison Pena, is going to be our host tonight. And I'm really excited, Allison, because I think for a while you and I are going to be hosting a lot of the shows. We're going through some changes here. We are adding panelists. So until everybody feels comfortable, Alice and I will be carrying the load, so to speak. But tell us about your guest, because she sounds very interesting and I think she has a lot to share.
I'm really excited to introduce Teryn Roberts. She is a mom of 3 boys, wife, and a new author of 2 books for children. I Deserve Better and Color, Repeat, Believe. I've gotten both of them and they are wonderful. They're written for 6 to 9-year-olds and they're based on a true story out of her life experience, and dedicated to her son. So I am very excited to hear your story. I know that you've been doing readings and book signings and workshops, and that your family all supports you and comes out with you. And so I am just so thrilled to have you here, and take it away.
Thank you so much. I really, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your podcast. You know, the journey to being an author wasn't something that I really had aspirations for. It's just something that just kind of fell in my lap, so to speak. I actually wrote I Deserve Better in my head about 15 years ago. And, I was in a situation where I was a single mom. I had my son was, at the time was about 4 or 5 years old. And unfortunately, he was dealing with an inconsistent or absent parent. His father just wasn't around. And I had the challenge of helping him navigate through that, even navigating it myself because I had my own feelings. And so I don't know, I just kind of, I think it was maybe a way to cope myself that I kind of wrote this book by accident. And it's something that I didn't share with anyone at the time. It's something that I knew about. I didn't even tell my mom about it. I tell her everything. And it wasn't until probably 5 years ago that I even thought to mention it to someone else, to like actually say it out loud. And I can't remember exactly what was going on at the time, but something just pushed me to just say it out loud, like, hey, I have this thing. And so I'm married now. My husband and I, Keith, we have twins, Ace and Ross. They're 11. Jadin is now 20. He's a freshman in college. And yeah, so about 5 years ago, I thought, let me just mention this. Let me say it out loud. And because if you say it out loud, it kind of becomes real, So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I mentioned it to my husband, and I also told my parents. And once I told them, because I still at this point hadn't even written or typed anything. This was literally in my head all that time. And so I typed it and shared it with them. And that was like, oh, like I sent it to them and it was just like, okay. Like, so I'm just waiting, for their response. And the responses that my husband and my parents gave were like, yeah, let's do something with that, put it out there. And because they knew the background, they knew where it came from, it was, that much more, I guess, touching, for them. They knew the journey. So they
Sure.
knew, where I was when, these words came together. And So once I got that feedback from them, I'm like, okay, like maybe I can do this. But, in my mind, other people were authors. I never thought that that was something that I would or could do. I didn't, go to school for writing and, things of that nature. But I'm like, okay, maybe I could do this. And, so now I'm tasked with figuring that out. And, um, so I ended up self-publishing it. And, it's been quite a journey just even that part, the publishing. Yeah,
Teryn, can you tell us a little bit about what the story is about? Because
sure.
I have it, I've read it, but nobody else has. And I
Sure.
think it's such an important topic that you were talking about. And it's such a beautiful book.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is I Deserve Better. I'll try not to get the glare.
Beautiful.
So this book, it's if you read the book, it's a very quick read, and that's intentional. It's quick and to the point. I actually, what I will do is I'll read you the dedication page. It's really quick. It says, "This book is dedicated to my oldest son, Jadin. You deserved better then. You deserve better now. I will never let you forget that. Love always, Mom." So that this book was truly, dedicated to my son. And, the story is it's a quick read about a little boy who, uh, he gets word that his father is coming to pick him up. And, it's kind of, you go through like the emotional roller coaster. First, he's cautious because he admits that, I haven't heard from him in a while. And now, he's kind of popping up like, how do I feel about this? So then it's like some uncertainty. And then it's like, the mom kind of reassures him. And it's like, no, this is a good thing. Like, this is great. You're going to go, you're going to have a great time. I'll be here when you come back. And then, so he's like, okay, like, yeah, I'm happy about this. So, it's now we're going, we're riding this wave, and he's excited, and he's, getting dressed, and he's getting ready for this, this trip, or for his dad to pick him up. And then, time just kind of goes on, and it's like, he's starting to realize that he's not coming to pick him up. And then now we're, the roller coaster, is we're coming down. And, once it kind of settles in that, okay, he's not going to show up,
Yep.
we're navigating that. And, the mom in the story is careful. I was very determined not to use any verbiage or really put any energy into bad mouthing or trying to wonder why the other parent didn't show up. It's not about that, because whatever the reason is, the common denominator is that there's a child who's not getting what they need. That's
Who's in
what
pain.
it is. Right.
Mhm.
And that the point is to help the child realize that it's not their fault. They're not to blame, and helping him get on the other side of that. So the way it ends is, and this is where the coloring book comes in. Even, with dealing with Jadin when he was younger, we used affirmations a lot. Affirmations were something that that I used to help him, just, brighten up his day when he was feeling down, or, something, even if he wasn't down already, just to kind of set the tone, for the day. And that's where the coloring book came in, Color, Repeat, Believe. So it's really just, it's a coloring book simply of affirmations, positive affirmations for kids. You have things like, I go after my dreams. I can make good decisions. There's, it's just a book full of positive affirmations for kids. It's just geared to promote positive self-talk, positive self-esteem. And yeah, it actually, I created the book for kids, but I've had plenty of adults that have said, bought it for their kids and like, wait a minute, I'm gonna keep this copy for myself. I'm gonna get another one for my kid, and I actually use it myself. It's actually become kind of part of my weekly kind of self-care routine. Coloring is relaxing. I don't know if anyone else, here colors, but coloring is like, I actually really set like a whole mood when I color. Like I'll light a candle, I'll pour myself a little glass of wine. Like I really set like a whole vibe. But it's great. I really find myself enjoying it.
So
I love
Teryn,
that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When this book was formulating in your mind, okay, was it formulating out of the thought of you were grieving for something your child didn't have, even though your child may not have been grieving,
Mhm.
okay, or didn't express it in that way? How did you hold it in all that time? I mean, you had this
Ooh,
idea, but you
yeah.
didn't do anything with it.
You know what? And I think because I was able to put the words together, it just help me because I never really focused so much on my grieving. So this whole since Allison, since you reached out to me, I've actually had a chance to really sit and think about that and like, yeah, like I was grieving. Because even to a point now, when I share, um, and part of the reason that I've figured out that I actually went through with this and wrote it and published it and put it out there was, even though I know that I did the best that I could in this situation, there's still some guilt that I have,
Mm.
wondering if I really did my best or if there was something else I could have done. Because my child was grieving at the time. He had hard time, and there's guilt with, I picked this person to be my child's father, and now look what's happening. There's guilt with a lot of it. So there was some grief there.
Yep. Yeah, as a mom, you want to protect your
You
child.
want to
Gina?
protect your child. Yeah.
Yes, Teryn, I wanted to know, did you share the book that was in your head before you actually wrote it? Did you share that with your child? And if you did, how did he feel about it?
Absolutely. So I would not be holding this book. We would not be having this conversation if Jadin did not give the okay. Once I, put pen to paper and actually, you know, put a manuscript together, I guess is the term. I'm still learning all the lingo. I shared it with him and told him, what my vision for it was. And he was like, do it. He gave me the green light, like, yeah, you need to do that. And that, oh my goodness, that it still gives me chills, um, you
Mm.
know, um, yeah, he is 100% supportive. In fact, he's a freshman in college now. I think I mentioned, but so his schedule is crazy busy. He plays basketball too. Um, but a few weeks ago, I had an event up in Albany, which isn't too far from his school. He's in Marist, which is in Poughkeepsie, New York. And he had that weekend off just by chance, and he wanted to attend the event with me. And it was
Oh,
like the best thing, to have him
that's so
there.
nice.
Yeah, it was the best thing. So he is so supportive, and he loves that I'm doing this.
Well, that probably is helping him heal through some of those things that he went through. I mean, oftentimes our kids don't tell us and we don't necessarily spot it.
Yeah.
Um, because I went through something similar as you did, except it was sort of reversed. My son went to live with his dad
Okay.
because he turned 11 years old and he went to visit. Next thing I knew, he wasn't coming home.
Mm.
Um, and so I sat down one day and I had a lot of writing that I had put together and I shared it with him. And a lot of it was my guilt, but it was
Mm.
also the grief that I cried almost daily that I felt like I had lost my child. But once he read my notes, he said, "You never lost me. Someday you'll see." And now we're the best of friends. So,
Wow. Oof.
you know,
Mm.
it's good for our kids that they
Yeah.
know what we're thinking as well as we should know what they're thinking.
Absolutely. Wow.
Tina?
Okay. I wanted to ask you, I know you said that you felt a lot of guilt, and that's kind of what led you to writing the book and things like that. So as you speak, as you attend these signings and you speak more and more about that book, tell me a little bit about how it's healing you and relieving you of that
That's a
guilt.
great question.
Every single time it's like, I do these readings and it chokes me up like every single time, but it's still, I know. And when I have these, I guess meetings, beforehand, when I'm speaking with either guidance counselors, principals, or whomever is inviting me into their space, to share my book, they're telling me how much uh, their students, their community needs a story like this because they haven't come across something that's so direct. And like I said, my book is my language is very simple. It's very
Mhm.
short and to the point, and it's done intentionally. But it's I get I'm getting lots of validation that it's needed, and when I come and share, it's I see it. I had a event, a book reading at a elementary school a few, mm, no, that was a few months ago now. Um, but literally, it was right. Oh no, it was right before the holiday break, before Christmas. The day of my event, the assistant principal pulled me to the side and said one of the kids had a complete meltdown that morning before I got there because her her father was supposed to pick her up for the winter holiday break, and she found out that he wasn't, and she just had a whole meltdown. And here I am, with this story the day that she's going through this, and
Mhm.
she, like, the assistant principal, she hugged me and was like, you don't know how much it this was needed. And we were sitting there just, we're both in tears, we were a mess, but it's like, it's I every single time that I go to these events, I read it and I feel like there's a piece that's I feel like I'm healing myself every time I read it. Um, I get through reading it a little easier each time, I think, because oh my goodness, the first time I had to pause and take a little sip of water because I literally got choked up. And I had prepared it, like I was at home reading it, to myself, but to be in a class with students and reading it out loud and then witnessing their body language as they're receiving it, it's wow, it's amazing. And Allison mentioned that oftentimes, I have family who come with me. My mom is, I don't think she may have missed one event, and that was not by choice. My mom comes with me everywhere, no matter where it is. But she gets to, my mom does grief work as well. And so
Yep.
she gets to witness it, just from, she'll stand out in the corner, but so she's witnessing me, she's witnessing the children receiving, she's also witnessing the teachers having their own reaction and receiving it, which has been something that I wasn't really prepared for. My focus has been on the children, but the reactions that I've been getting from the adults and the children, like, I mean, the teachers, it's been amazing. The adults' reaction, yeah.
Yeah, I think that this book really addresses sort of wounds that many of us have from childhood. Am I worthy? Am I loved? Do I love myself? How do I love myself when times are hard?
Yeah.
And so it's a very simple book, as you say, but I think that it really taps something that a lot of people feel. I mean, I remember my parents divorced, my dad had a new daughter, and I was in earshot.
Mm.
And he said, I don't know what I would do without you two. And I was 25. And I was heartbroken.
Mm,
I thought, well, but what about me?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was not 6, I was not trying to navigate this as a person who hadn't defined myself yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's a very powerful book because it taps into something that many people feel.
I had a friend of ours. He is a grown man with grown kids. He's a grandfather a few times over. So he is, well in age. So this is not a young man. But he bought the book for his grandchildren and he read the book and he wrote me this almost dissertation
Yeah.
with his response to his own personal response.
Yep.
Um, just saying how it he realizes that the experience that he had growing up with his father was not the greatest, and this book, reminded him a lot of things that he experienced, and he said it took him right back to that 7, 8-year-old little boy, and he was like, I'm beyond it now. I'm married, I have grown kids, I have grandchildren, like we have a good life, and he said reading it took him back, and it he was like those wounds, he said they're healed but they're scabs, and it just kind of
Mhm.
rubbed up against them a little bit, and he encouraged me. He said, yeah, you need to keep going with this, and because he was like it's needed.
Yeah, our life is filled with grief all around us. And a lot of times we just put those blinders on because we just don't want to deal with it, or we don't know how to deal with it. Or we try to deal with it and people around us to, pat our hand and say, oh, it'll be okay. But do they really know it'll be okay and
Yeah.
how? And I think
Mhm.
that's why your book, as simple as it is, you're giving people that just, here's a little bit of hope. Okay. Just look at it. Or the
Yep.
coloring book. I love the coloring book
Thank you.
because you can tell after a child with color in it what their feelings really are. Are they using bright colors? Are they using dark colors? Some things that we don't even think about on a daily basis.
For sure. For sure. I
And
actually my twins who are in elementary school, they're in 5th grade. I gifted a copy of the book and the coloring book to their the guidance counselor at their school. My oldest son went there too, so I've known her for a long time. I just sent her a copy of it, with a little letter, and she sent me a card, a few days later saying, when I received this, first, she thanked me, for it, but she said, when I read the book, it made me think of a little girl immediately. And she said, I went and got her out of class that day. We read it. And to have her, I actually ended up bumping into this guidance counselor at the school by chance. And we had this really great conversation because, again, this is where the validation comes for me, with not having the background of, writing and, not aspiring to be a writer, but here we are. My intention for the book is I am very careful not to come off as some expert. I am no expert. I just had a story to tell. That's it. And felt like other people could benefit from it. But the way I wrote it was intentional. Like I didn't want to give too many specifics to create such a story, because I wanted it to be open for people to, or children to fill in the gaps with their own story. That really, like,
Mhm.
I wrote this for the professionals to help them be able to start a conversation, because if we don't, I think you mentioned Karen, like if we can't ignore it, we can't pretend it's not there, or it's there, and we just need a little segue to get these, little ones to open up, because oftentimes they don't know how to express what it is that they're feeling, and they just
Exactly.
need they just need we just need like a little segue to just get the conversation started, and then that's when they can begin to really express themselves or ask the questions that, are confusing, or, that's when the healing can start, when there's room for expression and, them to open up and express, how they're feeling, or at least how things seem to them, or, whatever the situation is. But when this professional who's been a guidance counselor for years, when she sat there and told me how much she appreciated that it wasn't so specific, and that she could, being that she knew this little girl's story, she could kind of fill in, the missing pieces with her personal story. And they had this great back and forth dialogue with my book. And like, I'm like, yes, like that's it. Yes. So that it was just incredibly validating, and just, it just helps me, you know, keep going, with this.
Wonderful. Gina? And Christina, do you have any questions after Gina?
Don't
Think
worry,
about
I
it.
ask a lot of questions.
Me too.
So don't worry about it. But what I wanted to say is I applaud you for writing a book that is easy to understand, no matter what the level of education is. I think a lot of times we become very intellectual with our writing, and it becomes difficult for people to understand. And with you writing a book, but not giving every little detail and leaving room for people to put their own story inside your story, it makes it more relatable.
Yes.
And in a lot of communities, that is what we need, because there are a lot of communities that are single parent households.
Absolutely.
It's not what they planned for, but it happened.
Yes.
I always say life happens,
Absolutely.
So I applaud you. I look forward to reading your book. Everyone has this, I'm a firm believer, everybody has a story to tell. And it's almost as if every time you talk about it, you're healing more and more on the inside. And that's what it's all about. It's all about healing that pain that you had, so that you don't have regrets.
Yes. Yes.
So I applaud you for that. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
It sounds awesome. I can't wait to read it. And I love the fact that you put a coloring book with it. I do workshops, what I call healing through creative art.
Oh.
And for years, we've all known, even the professionals will tell you that that's how people heal, through art. You take your most autistic individuals, and they just do away with art. I mean, they just love it. And art, even when it comes to like dementia and Alzheimer's,
Yes.
you introduce them to art and you open up a whole new world. So I absolutely love the coloring book. I would probably do the coloring book before I read the book, because I love art, and it's so relaxing.
Yes.
So I applaud you. Very good job.
Thank you.
And you know what they say, once you write one, you are authoress. So, you got to write 2, 3,
Oh, I'm working on the next one,
things like
actually.
that.
I
And
am.
it's funny, because I'm in the midst of writing a book now, and I'm putting a workbook with the book.
Awesome.
And I just think when you do those type of things, when you add that art, it adds another level where it makes it more relatable. So
Absolutely.
kudos to you.
Thank
And I'm going
you.
to try to not ask any more questions.
No,
Oh, no,
that's
you're
fine.
fine.
No,
Great.
feel free. Feel free. I want to leave an opening for Christina to ask questions as well, if she'd like.
I
How
was,
did you
oh,
choose
sorry.
how did you choose your the person who did the illustrations? Because they are both playful, they capture the expressions of the child and the mom really well throughout the book, but they're very simple. And my favorite is at the very end. Can you, because I have
Sure.
this awful background. So the last page,
Are you talking about
says-
this one?
that one, I will never let anybody make me feel like I don't matter. I deserve better. And this child with the cape is just absolutely magnificent. So it's, pretty simple illustrations, but I felt like they really carried along the story and captured the story really beautifully. So how did you choose that person?
So again, this whole self-publishing journey, lots of trial and error, lots and lots of error, but
I do know.
so I found my illustrator on Upwork,
Okay.
and yeah, I created because this lived in my head for so long, I actually knew what the cover would look like. I didn't know any of the illustrations, how the illustrations would look like inside of it, but I knew my cover. And the cover was actually, I didn't mention this, I'm sorry. So the dog is not an accident. The dog is actually, we had a family dog. My mom and dad had a dog named Samson who passed away a few years ago. So the dog is kind of, inserting him into the story is also a little bit of, a little grieving and healing because we love and miss Samson so much. So it was just kind of like an ode to, our good boy. So Samson is, that was strategically put in there, just as a, head nod to Samson. But going back to your question about the illustrator, again, I knew what the cover looked like. I'm no artist, I'm not an illustrator myself, but I knew, and I had a picture of Jadin and Samson, that when I took the picture, and again, this being my little secret, like I saw that picture was the inspiration for the cover. And I so I knew when I was picking my illustrator, I put a post up on Upwork. If anyone has ever worked on it, you literally post a job and you put as many details as possible, and then artists will they'll kind of bid for the job, so to speak, and they'll send copies or links to their portfolios and things of that nature. So when you'll sometimes you'll get like a overwhelming amount of responses and you just kind of have to narrow it down.
Yeah.
But when I came across Sergio, his name's Sergio Drummond, him and I have actually never spoken face to face or even I have no clue what his voice sounds like. Everything has been through Upwork. I have a picture of him in my mind, because he had a profile picture. So I'm guessing that's him, but, really I have no clue, but, he was completely professional. He was amazing. As I'm working on my second book, I probably would work with him again, only because
Yep.
he just made it just so easy. He taught me a lot. He handled everything. He was patient with me because I had so many questions. He was using lingo and I'm sitting here Googling what the heck that means. And, trying not to sound like a, complete idiot, but, he was just so patient with me. And he just, when I saw his illustrations, from past work that he's done, like, I kind of just knew,
That was
he was
it.
gonna be
Yeah.
my illustrator. And, the fact that he was just so easy to work with, and made it just so, once he was done, like there wasn't anything left for me to do. It was ready.
Yep.
So
Yep.
he did the layout, he just did it all. And it was amazing to work with him. And I would definitely circle back and work with him again.
So I have an author question because
Oh,
I also wrote a personal
yes.
book. And Teryn's mom, Bernadette, wrote the foreword for my book. And she was literally the only person on the planet that I wanted to write that foreword. And so I wrote the book and I thought that was the scariest thing I had ever done in my entire life. And then I pushed publish and I knew that was the scariest thing I'd ever done in my entire life. So what was that like for you? Because
Oh,
you have it in your head and then you put it down, and that's frightening. And then it's in the world.
yeah. So I shared a lot of this process on my Instagram page. I have a like an author page. It's called Pinned by Teryn. On like Instagram is mainly where I post, but I remember the day that I got because my book is on Amazon, so they do all the printing and everything, and I remember the day that they sent the proof copy, and so I come home and there's this package at the door, and I know what it is because I haven't ordered anything else, so I know what it is. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, like I was so scared to open it, so I put it in a chair, and I'm kind of avoiding it, but it's like the weirdest. It was like the weirdest thing because I'm excited and I want to see it, but I'm scared to death. And
Yep.
my husband wasn't home, so I'm like, I need you here to do this. And he's at work and he's like, how about you just open it? I'm like, nope, just tell me what time you're gonna be home. Just come home, and I need you here. I need you here. So I actually recorded it, a little clip of me opening it. And there's this point where, again, I know what it is, but I open the package and I just kind of slip my hand in it. And I'm gleeful. Like I become this little girl that I'm like, there's so many emotions because it's like I can feel. I hadn't even looked at it yet. I just touched it and I just melted. But to see it, and oh my goodness, to touch it and feel it and see, like it was an amazing just accomplishment,
Yep.
for someone who, like I said, in my mind, other people were authors. It wasn't something that, I even thought of ever doing. And here I am with a real book that I'm holding in my hand. It has my name on it. Like that's me. Like that was just so, oh my goodness. It was amazing.
But when I pressed publish, I
Mhm.
felt so exposed
Oh, for sure. Oh, for
because
sure.
these personal stories, when they're in the world and anyone could read them,
Yep.
it's real.
It's very real.
It's
And
what will they think?
yeah, oh yeah. And that's part of the thing, I had those thoughts, just kind of preparing myself for, because, with any work of art, any book, not everyone is gonna understand, not everyone's gonna receive it the way you want them to. And that's just what it is. So, I kind of prepped myself for any backlash that may, come. I haven't really gotten any per se yet. I did have another uh author, a man who my mother we're my mother usually has a copy of my books with her on hand. We were at my uncle's like just birthday get together. We're at a bar in Newark, and my mother whips out my books at a bar because there's this man who's there who's a friend of my uncle's, and he's an author. He's a public speaker. Like he's a great guy to get some feedback from. And I was just meeting him from the first time. I think my mom was too. And when she heard what he did, she was, hey, my daughter wrote this, like she whips it out of her purse, and he's got a drink in one hand, but he stopped and sat in a corner and read my book. And I mean, this is a distinguished guy. Like he does a lot of work with Rutgers University. He's always speaking there
Right.
and like doing things. And this grown man is in a bar having a drink, reading my book. Like he stopped all conversations and stopped and read my book. And I still don't quite know what his everything that came with his the feedback that he gave me, because everyone has their own story and why they react the way they do. But he cautioned me, and again, we're at a bar, so he had a few already.
Right.
So but his feedback was, everyone is not going to be able to receive this. And he said, because he used some colorful language, but he basically said, reading this messed me up. He was like, this was emotional for me. And he said, there will be people who can't receive this and won't receive this in the way that you intended. And it won't, they'll have adverse reactions. And, and I'm like, that's okay. But I love that he said that to me, because, you need to hear that. Everything is not going to be all, bubblegum and rainbows and, but like, there's going to be adverse reactions. And I love that he said it to me. And,
Yep.
Again, I haven't really experienced that really yet. But I do acknowledge that it is a possibility. But what I told him that day was, because that day I actually had an event. It was actually my first event. And when I read this that day, it was at an elementary school. I want to say third graders. And after reading this, we did like a little Q&A. And this little boy, like, I'll never forget him, because this was my first reading. This little boy, he raised his hand and I'm gonna show you the picture that he was that he said he saw himself in my book. He was like, I've done that. That was me. It was this book when Jay was waiting at the window, starting to realize that his dad wasn't coming. He said, I've done that. I've been at my window waiting and realizing that he wasn't coming. And so this little kid, saw himself in my book. And I'm like, so when this man is telling me that, not every, like, there will be adults that can't receive, like, sir, I don't care, because that little boy saw himself in my book. And potentially something healed in him, or at least he was able to connect, and maybe something was clicked, and he understood that I don't know, because I can't have these personal conversations with him, but maybe after the reading, something told him, what, yeah, that's been me, and it's what, it's not my fault. Maybe he was blaming himself, maybe, I don't know, but maybe after that event, he left with the understanding with, yeah, that's a him problem, that's not a me problem. And that, man, that's everything to me.
Yep.
Absolutely everything.
Teryn, that last page where the little boy is wearing the cape.
Yeah.
Okay. That message, if we could learn that when we are younger, our lives as we get older would be so much easier.
Absolutely.
And I tell the story in my weekly podcast it's about the journey of life. It's called Avoid the Maze. And so many of us wait until we get to a certain age and we wake up and we go, wait a second, that wasn't my fault. That wasn't my fault. But we don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
But you knew what to do. You had it in your head. You wrote it down. For some reason, you knew this was the right time to tell my husband and my parents. You just knew that it was the right time. And that's what I try to tell individuals. They may not like grief belief. They may think that it's too sad and we're talking about subjects that they don't want to talk about. But there's something for everybody somewhere. And if we can open up our minds and put on that cape and feel the superhuman powers that we all have, we can get through so much. And it doesn't mean it's not going to be any easier sometimes. It's still going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But your book simply says, is it your fault? No.
No.
Yeah.
And when I get asked, the simple question, why are you doing this? Why are you, why did you write this book? My answer simply is, and I keep coming back to this, is, even though my son is grown, now, um, he's still my baby, but he's grown. My my goal is to help heal little broken hearts, because I feel like if we can, you normally, the first person that kind of disappoints us are our parents, in some way or another. And in situations like this, again, my goal, I'm not here to try to figure out why the parent's not there. And again, I just want to make mention, even though our story was the father, I've had conversations where the child was like, yeah, I can relate, but it was my mom, and that's, yes, absolutely. It just so happens that our story, it was the father. So that's how I wrote it. But absolutely, there's room for it, to people to put in their own story. And it could be your mother, it can be your grandparents, it could be whoever it is that's not there, that you feel like that should be. But my goal is to help heal little broken hearts, and with the mindset that if we can heal the broken heart at this age, at the young age, then there's probably so many things that they can avoid, you know, just growing up. Because when you have that wound that doesn't heal, and you're carrying that load, you're carrying that grief, with you as you're growing up, because it doesn't go away. You just move on. The days just keep going. But if you can heal it and understand, and you're not, blaming yourself, for things that are out of your control, then it's like,
Yep.
okay, we can focus on some other things, but yeah, just being able to just meet them at the young age and connect with them and help them understand that, unfortunately, adults suck sometimes. I'm not sure if I can say that on here, but yes,
You
sorry, but
can.
they
You
can,
can.
like, adults suck sometimes, unfortunately. And, but that has no bearing, that does not make or break your value as a person, as a young child. That has no weight on your value personally. And
Yep.
getting them to understand that sooner rather than later, I think, makes a lot of difference.
Is key. Gina, did you have a question or
A
comment?
comment. So, my comment. I'm still thinking about this man that was in the bar that was drinking, that gave you the negative feedback. I personally, I have this thing where if you don't like it, you change the channel.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like it, you don't have to participate. So sometimes, though, it may be something that hit home with him
For
that
sure.
he read, and he saw himself in that, because you could be the most astute intellectual speaker, world renowned, and
Yeah.
all of that, and you read something, and instead of encouraging and saying, because the book was written for children, not for adults, but adults are benefiting from it. So you're much nicer than me. I just want to say that, because I would have said, well, sir, the book is written for children, it's not written for adults. But a lot of times we have a lot of grief as adults
Oh
that
yeah.
we have not dealt with. And then
Mhm.
when we read something, then this is what happens. So I just want to encourage you to not be discouraged
Mm-hmm.
when someone says something negative and it's not positive or encouraging, because everybody wasn't meant to look at your channel.
Yeah.
They can turn
Yep.
the channel. We have free will,
Oh, absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know. So, oh, thank you, sir. I'm glad you took the time to read it. He didn't stop in the middle. He read it all the way through, and
Sure.
then he gave you feedback. So that speaks volumes to maybe there's something that he saw in that book that he was dealing with. And as adults, we become scared. As children, we don't understand, but as adults, we become scared and we don't want to deal with our own grief. So, but I love your mom carrying the book into the bar. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is just classic Bernie.
Yep. Yeah, I'll have her on here at some point. Teryn, I feel like one of the really, really important things about having written this book is that representation matters. And representation matters for the child that looks at it and says, I am not alone. There are other kids who have been through this. So I am not alone. There are other kids who can actually understand what this is like. And also grace for the mom, like doing the level best that she could to comfort and guide this child and have that child feel valued when there were mixed signals in some ways.
Yeah.
And so then how do you hold up both parts?
Right.
And have this child know that they are not alone. And I think that a book, you could have an absent parent, you could have a parent who was distant, the one who was there. So they're all different variations of the parents that we have. And they might be around, but not warm.
Yeah.
And different kids need different things. So they might not be able to provide what that kid needs. What do your twins think of all this?
That's a great question. So Ace and Ross, of course, they read the book themselves, and that's they understand. Obviously they weren't around, during the time, but they the little kids, they keep their ears on, and they listen. So they kind of understand, what their big brother had to deal with when he was younger. And actually, unfortunately, the situation didn't get better even, to this point. But Jadin's in a different place now, where he is able to manage it and, navigate it, himself. But they are, even though that's their big brother, they're protective of him. So they have their own kind of like, I guess, emotional response to it, because, they have questions like, well, what one of the main responses that they have is, well, it's okay because he has dad now, referring to my husband. So that's really the end of it with them. They're like, they don't like it because they know, it wasn't a great experience for their big brother, but they're like, well, he's got dad now, so it's okay.
And that's the resilience of children.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. They can see it in that way. Christina, before we close, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, thank you. I really want to commend you for writing this book, but also I can personally relate to it, being that child. And something that my mother also did was she never badmouthed my father in front of us. And I have to say that is something not easy to do, right? That we tend to, it's easy for us to want to badmouth that other parent to our children, and it really causes more harm than good. So I want to commend you for that. And also, I do have a question as far as when you were going through that period of time, did you have someone that you were able to vent to or go to during that period?
My mom. Absolutely, my mom. Yes. She has been, my safe space, throughout all of this. So yeah, my mom was definitely the person that I could vent to, and express myself without, worrying about what I was saying. I can just express myself freely. So yeah, my mom was definitely the one to create that safe place for me where I can just scream, yell, cry, whatever it was that I was feeling in the moment. Yeah, she was definitely that person.
Also, I have one more thing I wanted to say, and that is I commend you as well for being able to recognize that he was voicing some disappointment.
Yeah.
And as we're having this conversation, right, I think of my own story.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times as adults, we get so focused on our own grief, our own, problems that we have going on that we don't recognize what our children are going through as well.
Yeah.
So, again, I commend you for, writing this book, and it is so very needed. I don't have it, but I definitely will be getting some copies. So thank you so
Of
much.
course, yes. And just to piggyback off, thank you for sharing that. A lot of times when I'm having conversations about, again, the goal or, why I'm doing this work. And I think I mentioned this to you, Allison, before, like,
Yeah.
the book sales, they're cool. That's not what motivates me. I love, love, love being in spaces with kids, having the conversations. I get invited. This book is, when you read it, you'll see, like, it's so simple. The language, the language is geared for like 6 to 9 year olds, but I'm, because of the message, I'm getting invited to, I've met with students as old as 8th grade, because guidance counselors, principals, they're like, yeah, our community needs this. And so I've figured out how to, curate workshops to engage older kids as well. I've met with kids as young as 3 and all the way up to what's 8th grade, like 13-ish, 12, 13-ish.
Yeah.
So, and when I'm with the older kids, we do more like I have like writing prompts. We'll do like we will read it really quickly. I don't spend as much time reading it as I would like, the little ones, but like we'll read it just to get, like a home base, and then we'll do like sometimes Q&A, but also we'll do sometimes like writing prompts. And usually I'll have some of the prompts would be, think of a time when you deserved, whatever your situation whatever the situation was, when you deserved better. And it can be
Mm-hmm.
about anything. I try to keep it fun with them. And like, it can be something deep, it can be something where you went to McDonald's and wanted a milkshake, and the milkshake, the ice cream machine was broken, and you're like, what, I deserved better than that. So I try to keep it
Yeah.
open for whatever it is, to invite them to just be, express whatever they want. But also too, I understand that not everyone, can relate directly to this, and which is great, because it's like, yay, but also too, it's like, I try to figure out a way to engage them. So what I do is I tell them that, think of a time when something happened to you that was, maybe out of your control, that was not so great. It was negative in some way. You have the power to turn any negative into a positive. So think of
Mm-hmm.
a time when, something negative happened, and now think of a way that you can turn that negative into a positive. So I had a situation where my son had to deal with a inconsistent parent. I used that situation and I wrote a book. And now I'm going to, I'm meeting with you and, other schools, and I'm helping other kids. So I use that negative, and I chose to make it a positive. Because you have the choice to do that.
Yeah.
You can choose to be stuck and be like, oh, my life sucks, and this is just, everything is bad. Or you can acknowledge that this happened. Okay, I can choose to now do something to turn this around. And so that's how I try to, engage different, kids, and depending on, what their relation to the story is.
Yeah, life happens.
Yeah.
What is the best way for people to follow you?
Instagram, I pinned by Teryn is my
Okay.
Instagram handle, my author handle. I'm also on Facebook, Teryn Roberts. Yeah, I'm kind of open. That's kind of like my personal and author. I don't have a separate author page on Facebook, but yeah, between those
And
two,
your-
that's
And your books are available on Amazon for people to buy?
books are available on Amazon. And
Is there
Yeah.
any last thing that you want to leave us with? Because we're wrapping it up.
Sure, yeah. One thing I did want to say is going back to Jadin, who, the book is dedicated to, and just to show further how much he's so on board with this, that the dedication page that I read to you, he got it tattooed on his arm, on the inside of his arm, that
Aw.
paragraph. So yeah, when we moved him into college, I kind of teased him a little bit because his roommate had a picture of his mom on his desk, and I said, Jadin, like, you don't, I don't see, I'm teasing him. I'm like, you don't have a picture of me. Like, what's up with that? And my kid pointed to his arm and said, I got you everywhere I go.
Oh,
Okay, you
Aw.
win. Like, yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So he got that paragraph tattooed like right on the inside of his arm. And yeah, it's like
Aw,
his constant reminder.
nice.
Well, you've been a great mom. You've been a great guest. And, I want our listeners to understand that the reason we do this podcast, plus some of the others that we do on New Cleveland Radio, we're not making money at it, believe me, but we're healing every time. Your story is not exactly like mine, but as I heard your story, I'm healing. I'm
Mm.
thinking of things that I can say to my boys.
Yeah.
And they're grown men, it's not like they're little boys anymore, but I still feel like there are things that maybe I can still say to them to maybe heal some of the wounds that are there. So thank you so very much. And Christina and Gina, thank you for being part of the panel. And Alison, as always, thank you for being with us. But I'm going to ask you one question, Alison. Can you give us an update? How is your friend and her boys doing? Are they on the road to healing?
They're still navigating. I have a friend whose mom had a stroke.
Mm.
And she was in my bereavement group. So they lost their dad 8 years ago, and now their mom is, so they are still navigating all of that.
So they were on we talked about them on the last show, not by name or anything like that, but by situation. And I've been thinking of them, and I'm sure many of our listeners have wondered. And so
Yep.
keep us in the loop and let them know
Will
that
do.
we're all praying for them as well. Okay.
I will. Okay.
Have a
thanks.
great day, everybody, and thank you again. It was wonderful. Bye-bye
Thank you so
now.
much. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.